Hey guys, welcome to the Attachment Point News Roundtable. Today we got Josh Riley with Paladin Insurance, and Nick's here too to lend some MGA genius and kind of point us in a few cool directions. So thanks for coming on, Josh.
Hey
Yeah,
guys,
absolutely. Thanks, guys.
happy Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking
Yeah.
flood, we're talking cyber. It's a great Saturday, you know.
Yeah, I find cyber interesting, mostly because I don't really know anything about it. I don't actually know you read the news, so I kind of know what the hazard is, but I know it can come in all different formats. There's all different exposures to loss. But I always go back from a cyber standpoint. Cyber reminds me of fire insurance, except there are arsonists all around the property.
And they're getting better.
It's like, how do you even insure that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still an open question. And I think, first of all, Nick, you probably put yourself well above the median in terms of insurance industry experts in cyber just by not claiming to be an expert. So congratulations on that.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people who have the appearance of being an expert in cyber insurance right now who are basically just really good at doing the panel circuit and saying the same 5 things over and over again. So it's like admitting you have a problem is the first step to solving it, right? So admitting you don't know anything about cyber insurance is a good place to start learning about cyber insurance.
Good. I passed step 1 then.
There you go. Yeah, similarly, just getting into it, and I even took like a cyber certification through like an Ohio insurance agency group. It was like $150. It was cool. I feel like I'm just barely opening the can of worms, and I'll give you my 2-cent impression of somebody who's trying to start cyber insurance conversations who feels like they still have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
Your general liability policy might have like $25,000 for data, and people think that's associated with cyber. I'm like, that's like a wedge. Cyber covers, hacks. It covers business interruption if it's a good policy. They have people you can call if there is some malware that gets on there, kind of like what Ryan Deeds was talking about. You have a hotline that can come in. They can help you remediate the problem. They can help you source back, figure out what the problem actually was. And then what Josh's company does that's really cool, a lot of these cyber offers are having other components kind of tied in. And they have a really cool like phishing scan for your employees. They'll send out like a little fake test, and they'll do other stuff to kind of see how your cybersecurity is today, So,
yeah, exactly.
To me, Josh, that seemed like when I think of cyber insurance, to me, it just strikes me as naked unless you're doing all of the additional things that you're adding onto it. If it's just like, if we're going to just transfer the financial risk, okay, well, that's one component, but wouldn't it just be better to kind of catch it, to train your employees to do all of those sorts of things? I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a really good way to say it. And that's actually kind of an articulation of the reason that Paladin Cyber exists, is that we're doing all this stuff. There's a lot of innovation in cyber insurance, and there's, not enough people are buying it, certainly. And the coverage is getting broader, prices maybe getting lower. The loss ratios are still, depending on what segment of the business you're talking about, but if it's for smaller business, certainly that's still ridiculously low. And that to me means that it's struggling to be relevant. So if I talk to a small business and they're not sure whether they need cyber insurance, you could forgive them for being skeptical. And even most studies would say, just across industries and business sizes, that the vast majority of cyber losses go uncovered. There's a reason for that. I mean, 2 reasons really. There's a demand side problem where people don't buy the insurance enough. But the thing that outweighs that far, far more is a supply side problem. Is we can't supply the right kind of coverage to tackle these things, and maybe never will be able to, because most of the losses from cyber attacks are going to be indirect, difficult to quantify, ergo difficult to insure. So the idea of having that be a frustration when there's so many simple things you could do to mitigate the risk before you transfer it is kind of the reason for Paladin Cyber to exist. There are plenty of tools out there right now. The runaway leader for what happens in cyber right now, no matter what size business you are, but especially if you're a small business, is employee behavior. Clicking links, going to the wrong web pages. That's it. It's that pedestrian. And the idea that we're trying to sell these people a cyber insurance policy without picking off the low-hanging fruit of how about stopping Jim from clicking on that link first is just crazy backwards. So In insurance, we can always get too caught up with the idea that risk transfer is the only solution. But if you're an agent, especially, you're supposed to be a risk manager. And so to not do anything to assess or mitigate risk before you decide to transfer it, I mean, that's a big reason you find a lot of uncovered losses, because insurance policies aren't designed to cover everything. So that's what we're there for. We give you a clear picture of what you've got in terms of exposure, and then we help you manage it as much as possible. And then, insurance is still crucial.
When you say employee related, like if you could put a number to it, what's the percentage of cyber issues that are pretty much start with the employee clicking on a link or kind of kicking it off?
Yeah, by some estimates, I mean, if what you're talking about is an actual infiltration, if there's malware on someone's system, ransomware, things like that, that actually, invade a company's system, 90+%.
Wow.
Starts with a phishing attack. Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, so there are plenty of tools right now, and there are plenty of other relevant measures and things that you want to check into. Of course, you want to make sure people are updating, doing their software patches and that sort of thing. But if you're not, there are tools out there. We have one of them, and we're not the only ones. There are tools out there to help you so that your employees won't click a phishing link. If you're not doing that, and someone's trying to sell you a cyber insurance policy, that's great. Those two things either one of them are great, valuable things, but it doesn't make sense to do the cyber insurance policy before you can discuss the option of stopping your employees from clicking on the wrong links or going to dangerous web pages.
Yeah.
Do that first. You've knocked out a huge percentage of what's going to happen. And then you get the insurance policy, and it should be a really good value. Pay a few $100s a year, get a little cyber insurance policy. And then you touched on a thing that's also the other thing about cyber insurance is that most of the value in it isn't necessarily, it is in the terms and conditions to the extent that they dictate the response, but the response services are the most important thing. I always tell people, you're selling to a small business, go in there and ask them if this happened to you, right? If you had somebody inside your system and you lost the information of, say, I don't know, 250 of your customers, who would you call? And I guarantee you they'll stammer over that one, right? Like, they're not going to know who they're going to call.
Their help desk IT guy, and that's not their bread and butter. That's not their day in, day out. They're
exactly. So you can buy let's say you bought $100,000 cyber insurance limit for a couple $100s a year, or $20 a month or something like that. And then somebody told you, well, for that you can basically have a law firm, Experian or a credit bureau. You can have forensics teams all on retainer for you, and you can have them at rates that you couldn't possibly negotiate yourself because you're going through an insurance company. Yep. Would you pay $200 so that rather than stammering over the answer to that question, you can know right away, I just call my insurance company, they take care of the rest at the lowest possible price? I would think you would do that. So the service up front and the service on the back end for cyber insurance is, you don't want to say anything's more important. You want to make sure you have a good policy in the middle of it, actually. But those things are so vitally important, which is why when somebody tells me they have a $25,000 sublimit on their GL policy, you're going to get in touch with a claims adjuster who doesn't really, what are his resources for that, right? Leave aside the fact that $25,000 probably isn't even going to the right place.
Or if they'll even cover it on that tag. I was going to have to rewatch that so I know how to close now. Josh just taught me how to close the cyber policy. So.
There you go. Now you're off.
That reminds me of, I don't know what channel I saw it on, but it was basically an auto insurance question. And someone was saying, help me close someone who's complaining that I'm trying to sell 250, 500 limits, 250,000, 500,000 limits for auto when they want to buy, 100, 300. And to me, the difference is the lawyer that you get.
Yeah. That's funny.
If you have a $250,000 policy, the insurance company is going to get you a superior lawyer because they're not going to want to write that check.
Right.
And that's what you get. That's part of the difference, along with, maybe being able to sleep at night because you're not going to lose your house. But that's what it sounds like what you're saying, Josh. It's just basically like for a small amount of money, you're getting the resources a Fortune 500 company might be able to throw at the problem.
I just think it's such a logical problem too. You know, a friend of mine would joke, your company's not going to get broken into probably. No one's stealing your inventory, but they're going to try to hack your computer. You know, it's just, that's why I was joking around before we recorded about I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. You'll call these companies, you know, this attorney is making $700,000 a year, you know, and he balked at like a small quote I had the other day for like, I want to say it was maybe even $1,200 for a cyber policy. He's like a Hiscox or something. I'm sorry, Josh. I got to get in Paladin more.
Oh, they're pretty good.
I apologize. But no, it was less than that. I want to say it was like $800 and he was balking at it. And the guy makes $700,000 a year, you know? He was upset that it didn't cover copyright infringement. That's what he wanted in case he put the wrong pictures up and stuff. I was like, that's not really the point. It's not, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's there and there for most businesses. I mean, there's a media part to a lot of cyber insurance policies, but for most businesses, it's not. The media coverage is usually nothing more than like the personal and advertising injury coverage in a GL policy. So if that's in there, so if you're a class of business that needs that because you can't get that on your GL policy, it's great. But media coverage isn't what you're looking for. That's kind of what. You know, it's just, those are one of the things that people need to talk about more. Like, what are people actually looking for? Well, I'm looking for coverage if someone hacks into my system. Okay, well, here are the things you should pay for then, right? You don't need to pay for, don't pay for things that you don't know you're buying them, certainly. The last company I worked for, we offered media coverage. I can't even tell you, I'm sure there were many more media losses amongst our insureds than were ever reported, because most of them thought they were buying a cyber insurance policy. They didn't know they even had a media insurance. Not that we charged that much for it. We never had any losses, but you know, that wasn't what they asked for in the first place.
I gotta kind of read the fine line on that. And then Josh was saying too, they went with regular paper, standard paper, instead of a non-standard policy, I think, to make it more, you're saying meat and potatoes, a little bit more accessible.
Yeah, one of the things we're doing, which is, you know, it mirrors what we're trying to do on cybersecurity, which is that we want to make it normal. You know, like this is usual. You're almost talking about a standard of care. Like this is like the things that we provide to people on a risk mitigation, from a risk mitigation standpoint and a risk assessment standpoint. These should be normal things to implement for your business. You should have protections to keep your employees from clicking on phishing links. You should have continuous testing and training of your employees. You should have browser protections. You should be using credential management systems or some kind of password manager so that your employees aren't using the same passwords over and over again. You should have all these things. And similarly, like you and I talked about before, cyber insurance, one of the things we say over and over again is like, it's not cyber insurance is not specialty insurance, right?
Yeah.
Like architects and engineers, professional liability insurance, that's specialty insurance because only architects and engineers need it. Cyber insurance only applies to you if you somehow come into contact with computers in the online world in your business, which means it only applies to you if you're in business at all in any way. For
that one CPA who's still holding on to like a fax machine and like our filing cabinets.
We called up and we had a guy, like a piping contractor the other day. And he's like, well, I don't have a computer. And I was like, okay, well, what? Cyber insurance is still kind of privacy insurance. And believe it or not, you actually still have that exposure. So
all that paper everywhere.
What's that?
Oh, just all that paper, all the credit card numbers, all the checks that are probably laying out, you know, if you don't have that information.
I'm sure he's writing down credit card numbers on a clipboard somewhere. And so it's relevant to everybody. So we wanted everything to mirror that. So we're doing an admitted policy. We worked with ISO. We're using ISO language. So we're like, this should fit into your normal insurance program. This is not a brain buster. It's just, you just have to get used to talking about it, but it's a cyber insurance policy. Like you said, cyber insurance isn't that different from other exposures. Actually, what's happening isn't that new, you know, sort of exotic exposures aren't being created. They're just sort of migrating from one area to another. Like your property exposure kind of is going down. Like, you know, your physical exposure goes down because as more of your business migrates to the online world. So that exposure isn't new. It's like not created or destroyed. It's actually just changing shape. It's now a cyber exposure rather than a physical exposure on your property. So that should be a normal part of everyone's program. That's our argument. So we try to support that with the admitted play.
I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I wanna help with this, argument.
Okay, cool.
I feel like, Nick, if you could like design buildings with like concrete parking structures that elevate them one story, like that's kind of what Josh kind of gets to do, putting in this technology. Like you have to go find the risk and then kind of assess it as it stands today. That's the challenging part.
Sure.
Yeah.
Paladin, how did Paladin get started?
Yeah.
What is Paladin? Why don't you give a little bit of background on that? And, how do you go about conducting your business?
Yeah. So Paladin started about 2 years ago at this point. I didn't join until about 8 months ago, I guess. It was started by the founder's name is Han Wang, and he is a cybersecurity specialist. He's actually a captain in the Army Reserve Cyber Command Unit. And he was deployed in the Middle East, working on cybersecurity projects in the Middle East and in Korea. And one of the things he noticed out there was just how sort of the essential elements of a cybersecurity program, if you strip out some of the sort of unnecessary infrastructure and sales mechanisms that most software companies have, just how efficiently you could deploy these core efficient tools to businesses and people that need them. So when he got back from his service, he started up this company to build software for people to essentially just say, look, you don't need an IT guy. You just need to set these 5-6 things up. I can build them all on a user level. Basically, it's enterprise level protection on a user level. So think about how easy it is for you to set something up on your phone. That's how easy it is to set up these software protections. You don't need an IT person or anything like that. So that was his idea, is that I could help a lot of businesses, a lot of people who don't have access to IT expertise and can't afford the sort of minimum contracts for these software companies that have employ huge sales teams. If I just build this in one tight, efficient package, and I can charge them very little. Then when he went out there and he found, as he talked to small businesses, that surprise, surprise, no small business actually wanted to buy cybersecurity software. So he asked the very smart question of, okay, well, let's start at ground level. When it comes to cybersecurity, what is it you want? And they said, well, I don't want to get hacked. If I do get hacked, I want someone to clean it up, and I want someone else to pay for it, ideally. And he said, okay, well, then the other two things are just insurance, right? If you have a good response team attached to an insurance carrier, and you have a good insurance policy, then you have those other two things. And the third part was the cybersecurity company I wanted to start anyway. So he started putting together this company that would combine as a cybersecurity software company and an insurance agency, an insurance company, eventually maybe an insurance company. So what we did was we built an insurance product that was, again, had a good response unit, but also had an admitted product that sort of dovetailed with the security software that he had already designed. And now what we have is a comprehensive platform for people to manage their cyber risk in a really relevant way. So when you're thinking about small businesses, and there are a lot of nifty tools out there like quick, passive vulnerability scans and all these things, again, the runaway leader is employee behavior. That's the reason that Han designed his things to be all based on, let's protect your email, let's protect your browser. Those are the things we really need to nail down. So one of the core things that we do is we do automated phishing assessments. In other words, you should do a phishing assessment if you're a small business, but you'd be forgiven if you didn't want to pay a few $100s or a couple $1,000s to get one done. So we built one that just happens automatically. We could do 500 of them at a time if we want to. And then we, to avoid having the sales force attached to software, we just said, well, look, there's already a sales force out there. There's insurance agents and brokers all over the United States. What if we went out and we went to Brett and we said, Brett, we'll give you a platform, and anybody you run into, if it's a client of yours that hasn't bought cyber insurance, or if it's a prospect of yours that you're just looking to get in the door for cyber and more, go ahead and click one button and offer and launch them into a free phishing assessment. And then if they do that, we guarantee you they're going to get interested real fast, because they're going to fail. We've had there was one insurance agency that didn't fail. Like everyone fails. So you'd be surprised. So we have this platform that we knew that, like, for both insurance agents and brokers and for the small businesses, what we needed it to be was we needed it to be an enablement platform. Like, this is realistic, this is cost effective for you to do your job better than you did it before. And to the extent that we've done that for people, it's gone really well, and we just need to reach more people now.
It's a clean setup. It looks like, the cutting edge ones, all the leaders you think of out there right now, your Lemonades, Jetties, all that. It looks good. I like that you keep it simple though too. It's cool.
We try to, yeah. We try to keep it simple and clean. The underwriting process for the policy is about 90 seconds. But that has a lot to do with the fact that the real relevant questions we've already answered. If the condition precedent, it's not a condition, you don't have to buy our software, but if the sort of premise is that you're going to use these software tools, we don't need to ask you many questions. 90+% of what's going to happen to you, we would want to ask you about: are you protecting your inbox? Are you protecting your browser? We already know the answer to those questions. We don't have to ask you, right? So we just have to ask you, what do you do? How big are you? Okay, you're going to use these tools. Fantastic. Here's a great price.
It's cool.
Interesting.
So it should be that simple. And obviously we're not the only ones trying to sort of work the pre-breach and the post-breach side of this thing. But I think we have a good angle on it that's particular for really small businesses.
Yeah. What about the as an admitted product? How do the regulators factor into this? How easy or difficult are they to work with, given that this is a hot button topic?
Yeah, it's been, we've had a pretty good experience. We've worked with, I don't know if you guys know the company Boost Insurance.
Yeah, Boost is great. Alex.
Yeah. So we work with them, and they've done a great job of administering a lot of the regulatory stuff, which has been excellent. The difficult part of it is that we don't have, so ideally what we would do if you're a company and you're starting up an insurance product and you have tools that you think are going to mitigate risk, you would file rates that are much lower, right? We should be able to say, well, look, take your rates and cut them by 50 because we're going to put all these things in place.
Sure.
But not having data behind that, we have to use data that's available, right? So essentially we kind of get a slow start on what our actual goal is. Our actual goal would be to pass the savings along to policyholders. Yeah. If it turns out we can sell $1 million policy and we can actually do it for $400, we'll do that. But we made it really easy on ourselves because we had to. We used ISO forms. We used the ISO rating manual. We modified it a little bit to fit what are the particulars of our program and our software. But we went with sort of pre-approved data. So we haven't had much trouble. We have the normal trouble, which is that, having to run and get things notarized and whatever, like other archaic sort of things.
That's funny. Yeah.
But as far as response goes and like questions coming back, it hasn't been a real big thing for us. And that partially that's thanks to Boost, and partially that's just, I think we've taken a real conservative tack with making sure we didn't step on anybody's toes.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. That the notarizing is just that is so funny. It compounds on my end. We do excess and surplus lines, so I'm notarizing stuff every quarter because we have to file our tax returns to each of the states that we do business with. It's freaking unbelievable. I got to go to UPS and get something notarized, and then either scan it in or I have to mail the hard copy. It's unbelievable.
Like we were so our headquarters I'm in Virginia, but our headquarters is in San Francisco, and I was there this summer and I had to get a bunch of things notarized. And so I got to enter the exciting world of the roving notary in San Francisco. We met some cool characters, came by the office. You don't have to have a certain presentation or a certain look about you to be a notary. That's for sure. It was quite a crew.
Yeah, I think you just have to pass a test. Yeah, I just luckily I got a UPS a couple miles away, so I just go there, get my hair cut, which I'm gonna do after this.
There you go.
Same kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I usually do too. But yeah, it's just that stuff is crazy. I think I was with a group recently talking about this stuff, and then you just you can't tackle all these things, but from a regulatory perspective, you just have to pick. We talk all the time. Almost everything we do is programmatic, right? Our entire underwriting platform is programmatic. We don't have any individuals or human hands touching a submission or anything like that. but there's no way of avoiding that. At some point, if somebody cancels the policy in a
Mm-hmm.
certain state, I'm going to have to lick an envelope, like it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
And is there value in that? I don't know. And is the, and a lot of the stuff just isn't built to think that way, but what it costs us in terms of user experience to have somebody opt out of something versus, versus opt in versus opt out. Like, it's a huge difference in user experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one more question, or it's one more screen, or it's a slightly more confusing screen. And what is the value being created for the policyholder in that? And I think that's an argument that a lot of people would a lot of regulators would have some sympathy for. It's just that, how do you get to all this stuff? There's so many of these little issues across all 51 jurisdictions that we've got to work in.
Yeah. You don't have to spill the beans, but I thought I heard that potentially down the road you could become a carrier.
Yeah, that's one. I mean, I think that's one path, right? Like, if we eventually we could file our own, I think that the sort of conservative route is you form a captive, take a little risk yourself, take a little more risk, and then eventually become a licensed insurer, file your own product rather than having a partner file it for you. One of the things we've learned in the last, year or so, I say since I started, and I'm really learning this personally too, is you don't want to try to over-engineer or oversteer toward what you think the outcome is going to be. I think that we want to retain that potential. I think we haven't done anything that would close that off as an option. But if you steer too tightly toward what you think the vision of success is going to be, you end up dismissing a bunch of opportunities. I think that's true. Like, anybody who's in an entrepreneurial, you guys have probably had this experience too. You end up dismissing things that are totally valid, or you're prejudiced $1 over another. Yeah.
Oh, everything I thought a week and a half before, I was like, I'm going to do my own agency. Everything's totally different. Like, I have these 18 things I'm going to chase. I'm going to do this, week one, it's all out the window, and you have to pay attention to what's working today, Still maintain the same goal, but the road you take is.
Well, it's kind of like that thing,
unfolding.
that old saying about there's a Greek, the Theseus's ship or whatever, where they replaced every piece of wood, so is it still his ship?
Yeah.
You start a business and you have all these ideas, and then all the ideas get eliminated and then replaced with other ones, and you look, this is still the business that I had in mind. Like, yeah, it's a little bit of an organism, right? You have to just keep on watching out for things that make sense, paying attention when you do things that don't make sense. That's one of the things I love about doing what we're doing now, is just that failure is so much different now than it was when I worked for a big company. Failure was discouraging when you work at a big company because you usually stop,
Yeah.
When you work in a startup operation, and then failure is mildly exciting because you're like, wow, we failed at something, that's useful. I'm glad we learned that so fast. We had a meeting today and they told us they didn't like what we did. What a great way to learn something.
Yeah.
So that's good for your soul, I think. I think that's a fun way to get things done.
I think you become a different animal out in the wild. It's kind of super random, but like, I was like hiking one time in like Scotland with my family. It was like a big trip. Everyone graduated, like high school, college, whatever. And there's like these sheep out there in the wild that just looked way healthier, way smarter, like fit. And then you go back to like a zoo or a farm or whatever, and the sheep are just kind of weird, cockeyed, something's growing off them. I was like, man, like being on your own in the wild turns you into like a different beast, as opposed to here's your lane, here's your slot,
Yeah. You're supposed to run into things you weren't supposed to run into. And
it takes a minute to adjust. I mean, I joke that there's some days you're just staring at a wall trying to figure out what you're doing next, I think you kind of rewire a little bit when you start forging your own path,
Yeah. That's one of the things we look for. I don't know if you guys, are in this, mode, but as we interview people, one of the things we like, are you going to get freaked out when you don't have a basket of things to do and you have to basically, what you have is an empty basket and you need to fill it? Like, are you going to be okay with that? Because it's a little bit of a skill. Some people hate that feeling, I think everybody hates it a little bit. You wake up and you go like, am I a full failure right now? I'm not doing anything. I'm in my pajamas today. And is that bad? But if you can manage your way through that, there's a lot of rewards for it. But there's some people who really don't like that feeling. That's one of the things we have to watch out for as we hire people, because we're still fully in that mode where we're hiring, you've got to create your job as you go, really. Still, even at this point for us, you got to create your job, or else no one's going to hand it to you. You're not going to show up in the morning with a list.
Yep.
I like that. I like that a lot. I mean, that's something that I worry about, hiring people and knowing that they're sitting there with nothing to do, twiddling their thumbs, and they're waiting for me.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't, I don't have time to reach out to you and tell you what you should be doing today. So, sort of what we're doing, find something.
Yeah.
Like, go add value. Brett, it reminds me of the Celtics games. They have, between commercials, they'll have the Celtics player smiling with a little sign that says, "I'm adding value."
That's cool. That's cool.
The Brad Stevens thing.
Yes. Yeah. So
cool.
it's, I like that, because it's so true. It's something I'm really concerned about is we need help. We're hiring. We hire, but I can't, we as a team, the founders, we can't give them the attention that they deserve. So you sort of have to hire the right person.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was starting out and everything, I kind of, when I was interviewing and talking to the guys at Paladin, I was in a mode where I was almost trying to talk them out. I kept telling them all the things that I didn't know how to do, right? Like, I was trying to make sure they understood that I wasn't like a regulatory, person, and I didn't, and they said, look, we'd be crazy to hire somebody right now who is a specific thing, because we don't even know, right? Like, that same experience. Like, you could sit there and we might not have that to do for 5 months and you'd have nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could find out 3 days from now that we're actually going to fail at that. And then we just have you sitting there and that's what you do. So they said, the terminology I hear a lot of people saying is like, you just have to hire athletes, right? Yeah. You want that like utility infielder guy, or the guy who can play the slot, return kicks, whatever your metaphor is. You just need to hire athletes, because it's just, you don't know what it's going to look like in 3 months. You better have people on staff who you can just look at them and just say like, hey, can you fill this position real quick? Because we need somebody who can do this. We just found this opportunity. Any way you can run and plug this.
I love that.
And, that was the thing that actually made me feel really good about joining, is I said, well, I can be an athlete. Yeah. I don't know if I'm the best at like every single nerdy aspect of insurance that you possibly might have on your, but I know I can do all of it pretty okay, and I can figure out the stuff I don't know. So if you want an athlete, fine, I'll join. That's kind of what what made me feel good.
Well, and kind of going to the opposite end of where we're at today, I have a buddy who got hired for a teaching job with Amazon, and originally they're going to have him based off Seattle, but he's like, hey, I'm living in Florida with my family, just moved here with my baby, can I do this remote? They're like, yeah, go ahead. And then he said that they'll build and blow up teams all the time. If they like an idea, they'll form an army. If they see it's not working, there's no reserve. There's no like, I'm sorry. There's nobody cares. They just put those assets somewhere else. He actually worked at Tom's Shoes before that, said the same thing. Those guys they'll chase a problem, see a problem. If it's working, cool. If not, who cares? Move on. Let's go get the next, it's kind of that mindset,
I think it's good. It's obviously not for everybody. It's funny. It's one of those things that if you're in a big company that's sort of bureaucratic and slow moving, everybody kind of pines for that. But then if you're in that situation where they do that, you get nervous about it, right? Like the stability is nice, but so is that sort of entrepreneurial kind of just like fast up and down kind of attitude. There's good and bad to both of them. I mean, I call people at my old company all the time and we talk and I say, is it easier or harder? I'm like, oh yeah, it's totally easier and like way harder too.
Yeah.
Like it's,
that's funny.
It's like what people say when your kids get older, right? Like when my kids were 2, I asked my sister, like, it gets easier after this, right? And she was like, oh yeah, it totally gets easier. It also totally gets harder though.
Yeah.
Like just, things change. So, but yeah, no, we're very happy with where we are. We got a good group of people with us too, which is cool.
It's cool. Fantastic. Well, I don't want to hold you guys too long today. We all have a few things to work on, it sounds like, and a few things to chase down, but no, great talking, Josh. Thanks for the little tidbits. I think they'll be really helpful when trying to get cyber out there. I'll try to my goal will be like 3 phishing tests this week. I'll try to do 3, phishing tests for Paladin.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let me know how it goes, and just if we can help you out all, of course. And thanks, guys. I appreciate the time. Thanks for letting me ramble on about Paladin a little bit. And
I learned a lot. Seriously, that was educational. I appreciate it.
Cool company.
Good talking to you guys.
We'll catch you again. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you.
Hey, guys.
Bye now.
Peace.